And now we're joined by our guest. He is Brian Baldinger. He covers the NFL, of course, for NFL Network. The king of the Baldy breakdown. Baldy, we're about halfway through this sucker. How's the NFL season been treating you?
I mean, once the train gets going, John, it's no slowing it down. So the big thing is for anybody, I don't care what your position or Brian Dable, like you got to like establish your routine. And once you get in your routine, I mean, we live in 7-day life cycles. So, you finish the seventh day and then you get up and you start it all over again. That's kind of how we do it. But I mean, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a great year. It's a lot of parity, a lot of surprises. Certainly the Giants are one of them. So it's great for the league right now. It's great for me.
Well, we know how we're doing it. Baldy, how are the Giants doing it? You mentioned a lot of surprises. The Giants are one of them at 6-2 with the bye, tied for Dallas, second place NFC East. How do you break that down? How have the Giants gotten here and defied all expectations?
I think you got to go back to week 1 against Tennessee. You go down, Saquon scores, and you go for 2 to go for the win. Like, I just feel like that. I'm not saying that shaped the whole season, but that's a good football team that the Giants beat that day. We all recognize it now. They might not have been where they are now back then, but they beat a good team. Baltimore's a good team. You made the plays at the end of the game to win that game. So you're finding ways to win games, and then you're doing enough to stay competitive in the game. I mean, to shut, the Packers out in the second half of that game and, find a way to win it in London. I mean, that's what it is. They're maximizing the talent that they have. Obviously the receiving group isn't what it needs to be and all that kind of stuff, but they're working around all that stuff, working around the injuries that they've had, and they're not turning the ball over. It's 8 turnovers in 8 games, John. So you're not giving teams easy scores or easy, short fields. And then they're just a well-coached team. They don't beat themselves.
Yeah, Baldy, no question about it. I'm with you. And, I think it starts with the run game, right? And I'm not sure this is necessarily how Brian Dable and Mike Kafka would play if they would, create their team in a lab.
Yeah.
But this is their path to victory that they've come up with, right? So your thoughts on the job they've done, utilizing the talent at their disposal to get this done?
I mean, he's my coach of the year. What Brian's done and what Wink and, what Kafka's done, because really what coaching should be is, okay, what do we have and how do we maximize what we have? And how do we game plan around what we have? And Saquon and Daniel Jones have been 2 really good runners. They've been durable. They've been excellent. They've done it in combination. They've done it out of necessity. And that's how they've built this team. And so Baldinger has been a really good surprise, as a tight end that can block and catch and do some things. Obviously got hurt at the, towards the bye, but this is what coaching is all about. And what Wink has done with guys that came off the street, guys that are playing corners and protecting the edges right now, putting them in a position where they can, use some of the skills that they have to the best of their ability.
It's funny. I mentioned Saquon, and look, he deserves a lot of the credit, a lot of explosive plays. He looks like his old self. But I also want to tip my cap to the offensive line, because this Giants offensive line, as you know, Baldy, has been beaten up to a pulp for like the last 7 years. And yeah. I really think this is the best run blocking offensive line I've seen here. Till you go back to the Brandon Jacobs, Ahmad Bradshaw days of the Super Bowl teams.
Yeah.
And, I remember a couple years ago, Saquon Barkley had more yards after contact than he had yards.
Right.
That's not the case anymore. He's got some room to operate.
Yeah. Well, I think, it starts with, what Joe did, Joe Shane did in the offseason. I mean, look, the Indianapolis Colts miss Mark Lewinsky. I mean, he's like, just the name says it. He's a Glowinski. He's glue. Feliciano. Like, those guys are just steady inside. Andrew is really developed. I mean, he's a special player right now. We didn't think that was the case his rookie year, but he's a special player right now. They've cobbled the left guard position together. Bobby Johnson is a great coach, offensive line coach. He did the same thing up in Buffalo. He's just a special guy. He knows how to communicate. He knows how to teach. He knows how to develop. And ultimately, you got to play together. And that's kind of what you're alluding to here, John, is like they're playing really well together. And you don't see quick penetration. You see guys that actually understand and know what their assignments are even when the defense is moving, shifting, and all the stuff that they'll do all the way up into the snap. So it's a great coaching job, Bobby, getting guys in there that really understand how to play, just steady Eddies. They don't have to, they don't have to be all pros, but they just have to be like really good, solid players. And that's what, and Evan is coming on. So I just feel like for the first time, like you said, in a long time, we could actually talk about the line as being a strength.
Baldy, we could talk about this in the context of the Giants. If you want to take it league-wide, you can too. But I really think we're seeing a little bit of a transformation league-wide here with the run game as teams play more of these two high safeties. I mean, look at the years that Aaron Rodgers having, that Tom Brady's having, Matthew Stafford's having, and we're seeing a lot of these running backs having big years. And, we're not seeing every team running outside zone now, right? We're seeing power, counter, gap scheme. Mm-hmm. What have you seen in terms of the evolution we've seen in the league this year in terms of the run game waking up and maybe in different ways than what we've seen in the last couple of years?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, Chicago, Seattle, go around how Dallas cobbled their team together with Cooper Rush, in there, winning 4 games. And they're, I see a lot of 13 personnel, John, 3 tight ends out there in Seattle, especially. But Dallas went to it. They got 2 good rookie blocking tight ends. A rookie left guard. They've kind of worked around that. But, Chicago, as they developed their quarterback, this is what they do best right now with a rebuilt offensive line. They run the ball. The quarterback is a big part of it. Quarterback runs and some scrambles, but, Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery are really good at it. And so that's what I see. And even last week, what Jacksonville's doing right now, it's the best that they've run the ball really, really well the last month. They haven't won, all the games, but they've run the ball really well. I feel like this is where we're at right now. Like, let's figure out what we can do best to protect our quarterback, take care of the football, not turn it over, and stay competitive. And you watch this week and see if Green Bay doesn't take that formula against the Cowboys and how they might shock the Cowboys, trying to stop a 5-game losing streak. So I'm with you, John. I see it across the league. It makes sense to me. You want to play 2 high safeties and stop the deep passing game? Okay. But even if they're not sitting back there, they're still rolling that safety down. Teams are going to that formula right now, and it's working for a lot of teams.
Don't miss Giants football at MetLife Stadium. Limited tickets are available for all remaining home games, including a matchup with the Eagles in December. Visit Giants.com/tickets to find your game this season and secure your seat. And, Baldy, you talked about teams staying competitive, right? Adam Schefter put up a tweet the other day saying how the average margin of victory this year is the lowest in the NFL since 1970. And that's how the Giants have won their games. They're 6-1 in 1-score games this year. Is there a way for them to get out of that formula? Can they figure out a way to be a little bit more explosive on offense, or is this the way you think they have to play in order to win?
Well, they shipped Kadarius Toney out. We waited, a year and a half to see if he could do something. We're just not getting, Shepard's on the shelf. I mean, there's, you've gotten a little bit, on the outside from Slayton, which was necessary.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. I don't know what you can get from some of the guys that they have right now, Stills or, pick a guy. But I mean, I think this might be the formula. Like, it might come down to the final possession, final drive. You don't want to get, the Giants can't afford these games to get away from them. Although, weren't they down 20-0 to Green Bay at one point, or 17-0?
They've been down. They were down in the fourth quarter, 2 scores to both Tennessee and Baltimore too. So yeah, somehow, I don't know how they've done it quite, Baldy, and they've actually run it a lot in these comebacks, but they have come back against some good teams.
Well, I do remember though, like charting that game against Tennessee, like they couldn't gain an inch in the first half, and then the run started to kind of get bigger and bigger in the second half, and Saquon had obviously the big one to start the third quarter that got him in, scoring position. So, they haven't left the run game. And that's what I see also, though, John, is teams that do get down, like you mentioned about the Giants, they're not leaving the running game. They're not abandoning it right now. And that's a credit to, I think, some of these coaches saying we can't afford to abandon it. It's going to only get worse. And so I think that's something that to look for with Mike and Brian offensively, how they kind of script this thing going forward if they do fall behind in some of these games.
Yeah, I think so too. And you mentioned protecting the ball, right? Keeping it close. Daniel Jones has done a great job of that. They haven't asked him to do a ton in terms of making explosive plays down the field, throwing it down the field. but he's been very efficient in what they've asked him to do. So how do you evaluate his overall performance and his future going down the road here? Because, he is a free agent after the year.
Well, he's still got a second half, and maybe a postseason. So there's a lot of football to be played. He's done everything that the offense has asked him to do this year. He's led, he's run, he's scrambled, he's rescued plays, he's made some good throws. But, it's not where, Patrick Mahomes, it's not where some of these teams are. So that's where you eventually want to get to, but they don't have the personnel to do it right now, John.
Right.
So even if they finish the season strong and make the postseason, I don't know that you can still, you can't just cut your cord. I mean, it's a good quarterback class supposedly coming out, but I feel like he just keeps getting better, and kind of what they thought coming out of Duke is kind of what he is. He looks smart. He makes good decisions right now. He has figured out how to take care of the football. You do see the athletic ability. Eventually you want to be able to really attack, vertically in the passing game, but they don't have those players right now. So you can't ask him to do those things. And so you don't know, the evaluation might be a little bit incomplete.
No, I'm with you, Baldy, 100%. I've come around on the running quarterback a little bit. I was always your traditional throw from the pocket. That's how you win games. And I do think when push comes to shove, you're in a 2-minute drill. You got to, down 4, score a touchdown. That's what you need a quarterback to do. But I feel like with defenses and the way they've advanced, having that ability to run for a first down on a 3rd and 4 on a scramble, right, is so valuable. The way it opens up the run game when your quarterback can keep it on a read option is so valuable. But at the same time, there is an injury risk there too, right? Running around a lot. So where have you kind of started thinking about this now with running quarterbacks? Because I do think it's pretty important, especially for young quarterbacks that are still figuring out the pocket portion of this and reading defenses, getting the ball out quick. The run game helps, but there are risks there. So where are you right now in terms of how much you want to run your quarterback?
So I remember Bill Parcells told me one time, he said, Baldy, the NFL can only take what the college game gives you.
Yeah.
And that's what the college game gives us. I mean, Mac Jones is an aberration, but, they're giving you Justin Fields. They're giving you Trey Lance. They're giving you these guys that are mobile. Now, they're giving you Jalen Hurts. So what you've seen, though, is all these players that came into the league as kind of like runners first are all developing.
Yeah.
But they only develop, John, if you just never stop building around them. Like Justin Fields, the talent around him is much better than his opening day start in Cleveland last year. When the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown, they got themselves a star at the receiver position. And Jalen Hurts has benefited from that. And so you have to take what their talent says, which is, okay, they're really mobile. They're very good runners with the ball in their hands. But how do we develop the passing game? Well, you got to build the offensive line. You got to give them the weapons. You got to, and then you got to coach them. And so you got to coach them hard. It isn't always just take off and run. Keep your eyes down the field, extend the plays. This is your progressions. You got to keep coaching them up. But these guys are dynamic players. And yes, the injury risk is there. It's real. But, you got to protect yourself. The rules are there to protect yourself. You got to take advantage of them.
The Giants official connected TV streaming app Giants TV brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. And, Daniel Jones has been so valuable in that regard, Bolden. I think it really adds a different portion to his game. And, I guess my question for you is, what kind of adjustments do you think the Giants have to make here now at the halfway point, right? Because teams have seen this roster with these two offensive coaches, Dable and Kafka, right, for 8 games. They're going to watch the tape. They're going to figure out what the Giants are doing. And I think we saw the Seahawks do some of that last week, right? They really played that Daniel Jones bootleg. They had Bruce Irvin coming up the field and wasn't letting them get out and run. Are they going to have to make major adjustments here in the second half, or do you think they can still kind of stay the course?
No, I think you always have to keep evolving. And I'm sure, one of the things that teams do during a bye week is they go and they just self-scout themselves really hard. Now, they always do that. But I would imagine that Brian, and Mike and Bobby and the group is basically really combed the first half of the season and seeing some of the things that Seattle did in that last loss. although it was a very, it was a real close game in the fourth quarter. And then what else can we do? Because we've seen the creativity, we've seen the reverse passes, we've seen some creativity, and everybody has those deceptive plays. The key is, can you execute them, and can you dial them up at the right time? They seem to have a pretty good feel for that. But yes, you got to keep looking at the roster. What do you have? What can we do? What haven't we done that we can do? Whether it's unbalanced lines or just the things that are all possible. And so I think they have to keep evolving. I think the bootleg game, it's good, but it's a half field read. You can take those things away with the pass rush. So I do think there's other things that they're going to have to try to do here to continue to stay competitive in the NFC East.
Yeah, agree. Before we talk to the NFC East, Baldy, I want to ask you about the defense, because I think you mentioned it. Wink's kind of doing this with smoke and mirrors, right? We saw last year what happened when the Ravens lost all their cornerbacks. Joe Burrow was throwing for like 6 touchdown passes a game. So if you would have told me heading into this year that a guy they picked up in September, and this is no insult to Fabian Moreau, he's been in the league a long time, was one of your starting corners, I'd be like, all right, that could be a problem. But it really hasn't been. So how have they played this well, despite the fact that they've kind of, and now they're not going to have Xavier McKinney for, at least 4 weeks, that they've kind of been figuring things out a little bit with the personnel in the secondary?
Well, I mean, I just remember like Fabian Moreau, like he's just been good. Like they've asked him certain things. They've asked him to play some man coverage and cover across the field, and and he's been good. Ball's not going over his head, so that's encouraging. I think that one thing that I think you can expect is, I would imagine that Ojulari and Thibodeau are going to be better in the second half of the season than they were in the first half. And not that they were bad, but they were both injured, missed time. Like, I would think that now that they've seen a bunch of the league and protections and everything, that they're going to be better off the edges than they've been. That's going to help. But Julian Love has been an MVP type player. Wink has challenged both Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, saying that if you guys aren't in the Pro Bowl, it's my fault for not getting it out of you. So he's getting more out of them right now. They've got to get much better against the run than they've been. What Kenneth Walker did in that last game, it's not, did not sit well with Wink. You can't just blitz the run. You got to play better techniques, and get off blocks better. So those are fundamentals that I think you can expect. But I think they've got 4 or 5 guys, John, that are playing on defense that weren't there on Labor Day. So it's a credit to how they're working these guys in.
How good has Dexter Lawrence been? Man, he has had a hell of a year, huh?
I never thought I would see this from Dexter. I didn't think we'd see the pass rush, the steady push in the pocket, and he's playing a lot of snaps. It's not like a 350-pound man is playing half the snaps. He's playing 3/4 of the snaps or more in some games.
Yeah.
And so he's playing a high volume of plays, and he's an impactful player. But I really believe, honestly, that Wink's got a lot to do with it. He's seen other coordinators and coaches come through here, and we kind of thought we knew what Dexter was. And now we're seeing, like, this guy is a real force. And, he's rushing the passer better. He's getting on the edges of some of these guys. One guy seems to have a difficult trying to block him and keep him away from, the lap of the quarterback. It's been impressive.
You mentioned the NFC East, Bully. Let's talk about it. And the conference in general. Are the Eagles the class right now and everyone else is looking up? How do you kind of tier out these teams in the NFC?
Well, I think, the Eagles are just so well coached. They don't, they've turned the ball over 3 times in 8 games, John. Like, they're way out in front of everybody in turnover ratio. They don't beat themselves. They are really well coached in the moment. And so the Giants, the final play against, Jacksonville was a prime example. They're not getting in the end zone. But the Eagles, it shows up constantly. They've got really good depth. I think they have the best secondary in football. They're very thankful that James Bradbury is an Eagle and not a Giant. He's made a big difference. But they've made some key acquisitions. Maybe Robert Quinn will be the latest, but Kazir White and Hassan Reddick and A.J. Brown and, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson leads the league in interceptions. I mean, they've just stacked the roster. So I think they're the team to beat. Yeah,
no question. All right, let's talk about the matchup. Baldy, you have the call with Chris Carino on Compass Radio nationally for Giants and Texans this weekend. What do you think about Houston? They've kind of played a bunch of close games. They, I think, want to play offense similarly to how the Giants do, right? You're not going to throw a bunch of balls down the field. They have a couple speed guys with Nico Collins and Brandon Cooks outside. They run it a lot with Damian Pierce. What are the challenges for the Giants defense against that Texans offense this week?
Well, it starts with Pierce. You know, I mean, he's a really good back. He was coming out of Florida. He didn't get used a lot. You know, not a lot of tread off the tires, they like to say. By
the way, Baldy, what was Florida doing not using that guy? I'm watching him in the pros. I can't believe what I'm seeing.
I saw the same thing in Florida, though. Like,
yeah.
You know, he'd get 8 touches in a game, and he'd run for 77 yards and a touchdown. And you're like, he runs through contact. Like, you know, you just have to put a few plays up there. We'll just watch him against the Eagles last Thursday night. He is got tremendous contact balance. He runs violently, and he's got good vision. You know, some guys that run violently, they do that because they can't see, and they just run, you know, they just run into people. This guy's got good vision and great cutting ability. The offensive line, look, Kenyon Green at left guard and Laramie Tunsil. I mean, it's a good left side. They've got good players. They've drafted their offensive line. Like, all those kids are drafted. They're not afraid to play rookies. They got 3 starting on defense, you know, Jalen Petrie and Stingley. Yeah. They got rookies starting all over the place. If you look at their defense outside of the rookies, they look like they're an expansion team. Guys just came from everywhere around the league. But, you know, Lovey's got them, you know, playing his system, and like, they're competitive. They're very competitive. And if you give Davis Mills times, like, he's an accurate quarterback. So it starts with stopping Damian Pierce, though, because he's like, him and Kenneth Walker, they're going to see the 2 best rookie running backs back-to-back weeks here in the league, and they're both candidates for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
And then defensively, it looks like their pass rush came alive last week against a pretty darn good Eagles offensive line, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, Jerry Hughes beat Jordan Mailata twice right off the edge. You know, just speed off the edge. Now, Jerry Hughes has been in this league 11, 12 years. He's an experienced player. I'm sure Andrew Thomas has watched that, knows, you know, how low he can get and how he can turn a corner still. So there'll be, you know, there's challenges right there. And they've had 10 days to get ready. So they've had a little mini bye, and they know that they're competitive. I don't know that they're turning the corner yet, but they're going to give it everything they've got. And so it's a good, anytime a team can run the ball, it's a challenge, because the more they run it, the more, and the better they get at it, the more confident they get.
Baldy, this was fun, man. Always a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you at MetLife on Sunday. Safe travels the rest of the year, my friend.
I'm very excited for it, John. Thanks for having me, buddy. I'll see you Sunday.
Absolutely.
See you, buddy.